Xantus Prime's twin suns, mercilessly radiating, beat down on Jor-En-Rel's shoulders as he trudged through the shifting vermilion dunes. His ochre envirosuit, designed to provide both camouflage and thermal regulation, was failing against the oppressive heat. Before him lay the ruins of the ancient Cygnus civilization, their crystalline spires partially submerged by centuries of accumulated sand. Another blasted dead end, Joran muttered, wiping perspiration from his brow. His scanner, a sophisticated piece of Alarian engineering that had cost him 3 months' wages, beeped insistently. What now? The device's holographic display indicated an anomaly approximately 2 meters below the surface. Joran had encountered countless false positives, but this signal was different. It pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost organic. Well, he grunted, deploying his portable excavation unit. Might as well check it out before this infernal planet cooks me alive. The excavator hummed to life, its focused sonic waves dispersing the sand in precise layers. 20 minutes later, Joran's breath caught in his throat. There, lying in a perfectly preserved chamber, was a sight that made his heart skip a beat. A female figure lay motionless, her skin, the shade of polished violet dusk metal, gleaming in the harsh sunlight. Her long, wavy, raven hair cascaded around her shoulders, contrasting beautifully with her sleek, form-fitting, onyx bodysuit. The suit's thin straps and plunging neckline were indicative of a civilization that valued both function and aesthetic appeal. Joran's medical scanner confirmed his worst fears: no heartbeat. Yet, something about her appearance suggested she hadn't been deceased for long. His mind raced through his xenobiology training. Many humanoid species in this sector had evolved remarkable survival mechanisms, including the ability to survive clinical death for hours. Only one way to find out, he said, reaching for his emergency medkit. The alien adrenaline compound, compatible with most humanoid physiologies, gleamed in its protective case. Joran had never actually used it, but he'd heard stories. Taking a deep breath, he positioned the injection device directly over her heart. Here goes nothing. Beautiful, don't make me regret this. The needle plunged home. For several agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then suddenly her back arched, and her eyes flew open, eyes of the deepest cerulean he'd ever seen. She gasped, drawing in a desperate breath, and Joran found himself supporting her as she coughed and shuddered back to life. Easy there, he soothed, holding her steady. You're safe now. She focused on him, confusion and wonder playing across her features. When she spoke, her voice was melodious, but rough from disuse. You brought me back? Guilty as charged, Joran replied with a crooked smile. Though I'd love to hear how you ended up buried in an ancient ruin. She attempted to stand but swayed dangerously. Joran caught her, noting how perfectly she fit against him. Careful. Let's get you somewhere safe first. My ship's not far. Thank you, she whispered, leaning into his support. I'm Lyra. I was running from a Crimson Cartel enforcer. The Sandstorm. I thought I'd found shelter, but... Lyra, Joran said, lifting her easily into his arms. Looks like it's your lucky day. I've got a thing for damsels in distress, especially ones I have to literally bring back from the dead. Her soft laugh sent an unexpected warmth through his chest. My hero, she murmured, and though her tone was playful, something in her eyes suggested she meant it. Joran's ship, the Stardust Vagabond, cut a sleek profile against the darkening sky as they approached. Lyra had regained enough strength to walk, though she kept close to his side. The warmth of her body against his sent pleasant shivers down his spine, despite the scorching heat. Home sweet home, Joran said, palming the entry scanner. It's not much, but it's got character. The ship's interior was a testament to Alarian engineering, practical yet comfortable. Lyra's eyes widened as she took in the lived-in space, fingers trailing over the worn leather of the pilot's chair. Your technology, it's so different, she mused. Rugged. Reliable. Like you, Joran felt his face warm at the compliment. Let's get you checked out in the medbay first. Then we can discuss your apparent death wish with Crimson Cartel enforcers. The medbay's diagnostic scan confirmed what Joran suspected. Her biology was fascinating. Her violet dusk metal skin contained trace elements of crystalline structures, explaining both its beautiful hue and her species' ability to survive temporary death states. Your heart, he said, watching the holographic display, It's actually 3 separate chambers working in harmony. Beautiful design. Lyra's cerulean eyes met his.
You find alien anatomy beautiful.
I find lots of things beautiful, he replied, then cleared his throat. The scan shows you're recovering well, but you should rest.
A warning klaxen Schatterätse-Moment.
Joran cursed, rushing to the bridge with Lyra close behind. The radar showed an approaching vessel, sleek, predatory, and definitely cartel. Looks like your friend found us, Joran growled, dropping into the pilot's seat.
Strap in, Princess.
This is going to get interesting. Lyra buckled herself into the co-pilot's chair, her expression determined. He's not my friend. And I'm no princess. Could have fooled me, Joran grinned, firing up the engines. The Stardust Vagabond lifted off just as energy bolts started peppering the sand around them. The storm belt, Lyra suggested, pointing to the massive wall of swirling, vermilion clouds on the horizon. Most pilots won't follow us in there. Most pilots aren't crazy Ilarians, Joran replied, but he was already plotting the course.
Halt on Ticht.
The Stardust Vagabond shot forward, sand streaming off its hull as they accelerated. The cartel ship followed, closing the distance with alarming speed.
Another volley of energy bolts rockets the ship.
Joran yanked the controls, sending them into a spiral.
Shield integrity at 80%. Your friend's persistent.
He wants what I stole, Lyra admitted, gripping her armrest. Information about their operations. Names, locations, things that could bring down their entire network. Joran spared her a glance. You're just full of surprises, aren't you? They hit the storm belt at full speed. The ship bucked and groaned as massive wind shears buffeted it from all sides. Visibility dropped to near zero, but Joran flew by instinct and instruments, threading their way through the chaos. You're amazing, Lyra breathed, watching his hands dance across the controls. I've never seen anyone fly like this.
Stick around, beautiful.
I've got plenty more tricks to show you. The pursuing ship was good, but in the storm's fury, human intuition and reflexes proved superior to automated systems. After 10 minutes of intense maneuvering, their pursuer's signal vanished from the radar. Joran let out a whoop of triumph.
Tats ho wie du it on Ilaria, baby.
The adrenaline of the chase, the thrill of survival, and their close proximity in the cockpit created an electric atmosphere. Lyra's breathing was quick, her violet dusk-metal skin flushed darker with excitement.
You saved my life again, she said softly.
Why do you keep doing that? Joran engaged the autopilot and turned to face her.
Maybe I like the way you look at him ni Donnerstag.
The tension between them crackled like static electricity. Lyra unbuckled her harness and stood, moving with alien grace to stand before him. Her hand, warm and soft, cupped his cheek.
Show me more.
Ilarian tricks, she whispered. Joran stood slowly, their bodies nearly touching.
Are you sure?
There's no going back from this. Her answer was to press herself against him, her lips finding his with unerring accuracy. The kiss was electric, different yet familiar, exotic yet perfect. Her skin was like warm silk under his hands.
My. Shemom uret between kisses. We bond for life.
Are Ilarians so dedicated? When we find the right person, Joran replied, lifting her into his arms, we can be pretty damn dedicated. They barely made it to his quarters, leaving a trail of scattered equipment in their wake. What followed was a discovery of differences and similarities, of alien passion meeting human desire, of two souls finding connection across the vast gulf of space. Hours later, they lay tangled in his sheets, the storm still raging outside. Lyra traced patterns on his chest, her head tucked under his chin. I never expected this, she admitted. When my heart stopped in those ruins, I thought it was the end. Instead, I found a beginning. Here's the second part of the rewritten text, maintaining consistency with the first part and the original instructions.
The Stardust Vagabond emerged from the storm belt into the velvet darkness of space.
Joran sat at the helm, reviewing the encrypted data chip Lyra had finally shared with him. His jaw tightened with each new revelation. Holy, he breathed.
This goes way beyond simple cartel operations.
Lyra, wearing one of his oversized shirts that barely covered her thighs, leaned over his shoulder. The casual intimacy of her presence still sent shivers down his spine. "The Crimson Cartel is just a facade," she said. "They're working with corrupt officials from the Galactic Concord, and they're experimenting on various species."
Joran grault, scrolling trug se data.
"Testing biological weapons. But why?" "Look deeper," Lyra whispered, her fingers trailing along his neck. "The genetic markers they're targeting, they're specific to certain races." Joran's blood ran cold as he understood. They're developing a way to selectively wipe out entire species, while leaving others unaffected. Genocide in a bottle. "And Alarians," Lyra added, "are completely immune to their current formulas. That's what terrifies them about your species."
Jurese wilt KT kennt control.
Joran pulled her into his lap, needing to feel her warmth. Since their bonding, their connection had grown stronger, more intuitive. He could sense her fear, her determination, and something else, a fierce protectiveness toward him that matched his own feelings. "We need help," he said, nuzzling her neck. "I know some people from my military days. Former Special Forces operators who'd love to stick it to these bastards." "The cartel will expect that," Lyra cautioned, though she melted against him. "They'll be watching your old contacts. Then we'll be smarter than they are." Joran activated the ship's secure communication system. "There's one person they won't be watching."
Computer, connect to Frequency Sierra Echo 9 bis 9 bis 4.
Authorization, Rel, Joran K. Former Captain, Ilarian Special Operations Command. After several tense moments, a gruff voice filled the cabin.
"This better be good, Rel."
"I was enjoying my retirement." "Admiral Volkov," Joran grinned. "How's that fishing spot on Cygnus Prime treating you?"
"Kutze Krep, son. What kind of trouble are you in now?"
Joran quickly outlined their situation, leaving out the more personal details of his relationship with Lyra.
"The Admiral listent in Silence.
Biological weapons research, targeting specific races." Volkov finally said. "And your alien friend has proof."
"Solid Evidenz, Sir."
"Names, locations, test results, everything needed to blow this wide open."
"Get your ass to Cygnus Prime, and watch your six."
"My sources say the cartels deployed their elite hunter teams. Parker out." As the connection closed, proximity alarms blared. 3 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace behind them. "Speaking of hunter teams," Joran muttered, firing up the engines.
"Holticht, beautiful."
The chase that followed pushed both ship and pilot to their limits. The hunters were good, military-grade good, but Joran had learned a few tricks they didn't teach in any academy. "Remember that immunity you mentioned?" he asked, plotting a course toward a nearby asteroid field. "Think it extends to radiation?" Lyra's eyes widened. "You're not serious." "Dead serious," Joran grinned. "Ilarian physiology can handle short bursts of hard radiation better than most species. Want to bet these boys aren't Ilarian?"
"Joran."
Lyra said softly, touching his arm. "There's something else you should know." She hesitated, then continued, "The bonding between us, it's changing me. My biology is adapting to match your radiation resistance. I can feel it." Joran spared her a glance, noting the subtle changes in her violet dusk metal skin. It seemed to shimmer now, like the surface of a star. "Is that normal for your species?" "Nothing about this is normal," she laughed. "My people have never successfully bonded with Ilarians before. We're making history here, my brave captain." The moment was interrupted by a massive radiation surge from the pulsar. While their pursuers broke off their attack, retreating from the deadly emissions, the Stardust Vagabond pushed through, its hull creaking in protest. "They're lost," Joran said, pulling Lyra close once they were clear. "Now, about these changes you mentioned." Their kiss was interrupted by an urgent message alert. Admiral Volkov's face appeared on the screen, his expression grave.
"Rel, get to Cygnus Prime now."
"My security team just intercepted cartel assassins. They're not just after the data anymore. They want to study your friend. Something about unique genetic adaptations. Whatever's happening between you two has them spooked." Cygnus Prime's icy surface glittered beneath the Stardust Vagabond as Joran guided the ship toward Admiral Volkov's hidden base. The massive form of Xylos loomed in the background, its swirling storms casting an otherworldly glow across the frozen landscape. "Something's wrong," Lyra said suddenly, pressing a hand to her abdomen. "I feel different." Joran glanced at her with concern. The changes in her biology had accelerated over the past few days. Her violet dusk metal skin now had an almost pearlescent quality, and her natural bioluminescence had intensified. "Different how?" he asked, engaging the landing sequence. Before she could answer, the ship's sensors screamed a warning. Multiple heat signatures emerged from beneath the ice, weapon systems powering up. Joran yanked the controls, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma fire. "So much for a warm welcome." "Joran," Lyra's voice was tight with emotion. "I need to tell you something important." An explosion rocked the ship, cutting her off. The Stardust Vagabond's port engine sputtered and died. "Hold that thought, beautiful," Joran growled, fighting the controls. "We're going in hot." The emergency landing was more of a controlled crash. They skidded across the ice, leaving a trail of burning debris, before coming to rest near a massive crevasse. "You okay?" Joran asked, helping Lyra from her seat. She nodded, then suddenly doubled over. "Joran, I'm carrying your child. Our species are compatible in ways nobody thought possible. The bonding, it changed everything." Joran froze, 1,000 emotions flooding through him at once. Then, the sound of approaching vehicles snapped him back to reality. "We'll figure this out together," he promised, pulling her close. "But right now we need to move." They grabbed emergency gear and fled the ship, moments before cartel forces arrived. The ice tunnels beneath Cygnus Prime's surface were a maze of crystalline passages and hidden chambers. Joran's military training and Lyra's enhanced senses helped them stay ahead of their pursuers. "The Admiral's backup facility should be 2 kilometers north," Joran whispered, as they crouched in a natural ice formation. "If it hasn't been compromised, too." Lyra touched his face, her eyes glowing softly in the darkness. "Our child will be unique, the first Ilarian Cygnus hybrid. That's why they want us so badly. They're afraid of what this means." "They should be," Joran smiled fiercely. "Ilarity's got a way of changing the game, and now you're carrying living proof of that." A distant explosion echoed through the tunnels, followed by the sound of combat. Joran recognized the distinctive crack of Ilarian military-grade weapons. "Looks like some of the Admiral's people are still fighting," he said. "Ready to crash their party?" Lyra's answer was to pull him into a passionate kiss. "I never thought, when you found me in those ruins, that you'd give me so many new beginnings. A new life, a new love. And now, a new future growing inside me." "Speaking of that," Joran said, as they moved toward the sound of battle, "any idea what we should expect with a hybrid baby?" "My people's children typically gestate for 3 months," Lyra replied, checking her weapon. "But with the Ilarian DNA accelerating my adaptation, who knows? We're in uncharted territory." They emerged into a large cavern to find a full-scale battle in progress. Admiral Volkov's forces were holding off cartel troops from a fortified position, but they were outnumbered. "Time to even the odds," Joran grinned, pulling out his backup plasma rifle. "Stay close to me." "Always," Lyra promised, here on weapon homing to life. Their arrival turned the tide. Joran's combat experience and Lyra's enhanced abilities made them a devastating team. The cartel forces, caught between their assault and the Admiral's defenders, began to fall back. "Rel." Admiral Volkov's voice boomed across the cavern. "Get your ass in here, and bring your lady friend. Our medic needs to see her condition." Inside the fortified position, they found a fully equipped underground base. The medic, Dr. Eris Thorne, immediately began scanning Lyra. "Fascinating," she muttered. "The fetus is developing at an accelerated rate, but it's completely stable. The genetic merger is perfect. Almost as if your species were meant to be compatible." "That's impossible," Admiral Volkov interjected. "The Cygnus have been around for millennia. How could they be compatible with Ilarians?" "Because," Lyra said softly, "my people were created by the same ancient race that seeded Ilaria with human potential. We were meant to find each other, eventually." The revelation stunned everyone into silence. Then, the base's alarms began to wail. Multiple capital ships entering Cygnus Prime's orbit, an officer reported. Cartel reinforcements, cleared for orbital bombardment. They're preparing to glass the surface. Joran pulled Lyra close, his hand protectively covering her abdomen. Any ideas? Admiral Volkov's weathered face broke into a predatory smile. As a matter of fact, son, I do. How do you feel about stealing a cartel dreadnought? The infiltration team moved silently through the maintenance shafts of the cartel dreadnought, Crimson Eclipse. Joran led the way, with Lyra close behind. Her enhanced senses proved invaluable in detecting guard patrols before they appeared. You're sure about this? Joran whispered, helping her through a particularly tight section. Her pregnancy, though only days old, was progressing rapidly, already showing slight signs. I've never been more sure of anything, Lyra replied, her hand brushing his as they moved. Besides, our little one seems to enjoy the excitement. Feel. She guided his hand to her abdomen, where a subtle warmth pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm. The sensation sent a surge of protective instinct through Joran's body. Admiral Volkov's voice crackled through their secure comms.
Kurze Romance, you two. Engineering Sektions coming up.
Remember, we need that command core intact. The plan was audacious: steal the Dreadnought's command codes, transmit the biological weapons data to the Galactic Concord, then use the ship's own systems to prevent the cartel from glassing Cygnus Prime. Simple, if you were criminally insane and knew what you were doing. As they approached engineering, Lyra suddenly froze. Joran, look at these markings. The wall panels were covered in ancient script that seemed to shimmer and shift in the low light. Joran recognized them from the ruins where he'd found Lyra. The precursors. Lyra breathed, her fingers tracing the symbols. They didn't just seed our species, they left us technology. The cartel's been using it without understanding it. A deep hum resonated through the shaft, and the symbols began to glow with an inner light. Lyra's skin responded, her natural luminescence synchronizing with the ancient technology. Holy! Joran muttered, as a hidden panel slid open, revealing a chamber filled with crystalline structures. Is this a precursor control node? Lyra finished, her eyes wide. They built it into the ship's systems. With my enhanced biology, I can interface with it. Belay that, Admiral Volkov ordered through the comm. We don't know what that could do to the baby. The baby is exactly why I have to, Lyra countered. Our child carries both bloodlines. The precursors planned this. Designed us for this moment. Joran wanted to argue, to protect her, but the fierce determination in her eyes stopped him. Instead, he pulled her into a passionate kiss. Just come back to me, he whispered against her lips. Both of you. Lyra stepped into the chamber, and the crystals responded immediately. Energy coursed through her body, lifting her slightly off the ground. Her skin blazed with light, and Joran could see the child within her, glowing in response. The ship's systems began to change, ancient technology awakening after millennia of dormancy. Alarms blared throughout the vessel. What the hell's happening up there? Volkov demanded. Sir, Joran reported, unable to take his eyes off Lyra, we just found a way to turn their own ship against them. And maybe, a lot more. Through their bond, Joran could feel fragments of what Lyra was experiencing: vast knowledge, technological secrets, and a message left by the precursors themselves. They knew, Lyra's voice echoed strangely. They knew Alarity would evolve to become something extraordinary. My people were meant to guide and join with yours, creating something greater than either race alone. The ship's weapons powered down, its systems now under precursor control. On the bridge, cartel officers watched in horror as their consoles displayed data they tried to keep hidden, proof of their genetic weapons program, now broadcasting on all frequencies to the Galactic Concord. But it wasn't over. The precursor technology had one more surprise. As Lyra interfaced with the system, it began upgrading itself, evolving, just as she had evolved through her bond with Joran. The child. She gasped, her hands protectively cradling her abdomen. It's accelerating the integration. Ilarian adaptability, Cygnus biology, and precursor technology, all merging into something new. Joran stepped into the chamber, despite the warnings, drawn by their bond and an instinct he couldn't explain. The moment he touched her, the energy field expanded to encompass them both. Their minds merged through the precursor interface, sharing memories, feelings, and a vision of the future. Their child would be more than just a hybrid. It would be the key, awakening similar potential in others, breaking down the artificial barriers between species that the cartel had tried to exploit. "I love you," Joran said, both aloud and through their enhanced connection. "Both of you." "We know," Lyra replied with a radiant smile. "We've always known. Since that moment you brought me back to life in the ruins. Everything since then has been leading to this." The ship's transformation completed just as galactic Concord vessels began arriving in response to the broadcast. The cartel's carefully constructed plans were unraveling, their weapons of genocide exposed to the galaxy. But for Joran and Lyra, wrapped in each other's arms within the precursor chamber, the political fallout seemed distant and unimportant. They had found something far more valuable, a love that transcended species, a child that represented hope for the future, and a legacy left by an ancient race that had believed in Alarity's potential all along. The Crimson Eclipse's bridge erupted in chaos as proximity alarms screamed. Through the view screen, Joran watched in horror as dozens of cartel warships emerged from hyperspace, their weapon systems charging. "They're not accepting defeat gracefully," Admiral Volkov growled from his commandeered command chair. "Rel, get your family to the precursor chamber. It's the most protected section of the ship." Joran didn't need to be told twice. Through their enhanced bond, he could feel Lyra's determination mixed with concern for their unborn child. The pregnancy had accelerated further. She now looked several months along, her violet dusk metal skin glowing with an inner radiance that took his breath away. "They're deploying boarding parties," Lyra announced as they hurried through the corridors. "But there's something else. Something wrong about their energy signatures."
A massive impact rockets a ship.
Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as hull breaches were detected across multiple decks. "They're using suicide tactics," Joran realized. "Ramming ships packed with their bioweapons. If even one breaks containment." "It won't," Lyra said firmly, placing his hand on her swollen abdomen. "Feel that? Our little one's not going to let that happen." The moment his skin made contact, Joran felt it, a surge of power unlike anything he'd experienced before. Their child was channeling precursor energy through both of them, creating a protective field that spread throughout the ship. They reached the crystal chamber just as another impact shook the vessel. The ancient technology responded immediately to their presence, the crystals pulsing with synchronized light. "The baby's interfacing with the system," Lyra gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's teaching me how to use it properly." Through their shared consciousness, Joran saw what she meant. The precursor technology wasn't just a weapon or a tool, it was a bridge between species, designed to enhance natural bonds and unlock hidden potential.
Admiral. Joran Kellet trug se kom.
"We might have a solution, but it's going to get weird." "Son," Volkov replied amid the sound of battle, "weird stopped being a concern when your alien girlfriend started glowing and your unborn child started upgrading my ship. Do what you need to do." Lyra stepped into the center of the chamber, pulling Joran with her. Their bodies pressed together, fitting perfectly despite her changed form. The field intensified around them, and Joran felt their consciousness expanding beyond the ship. "I can feel them," Lyra whispered against his neck. "The cartel troops. They're not all willing participants. Many were coerced or modified against their will." "Then let's give them a choice," Joran replied, understanding flowing between them. Through their enhanced connection, amplified by both their unborn child and the precursor technology, they reached out to the attacking forces, not with weapons or threats, but with truth, showing them the reality of what the cartel had done, offering them a chance at something better. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the cartel fleet, modified soldiers began turning on their commanders. Ships stopped their suicide runs as crews mutinied. The carefully maintained walls of fear and conditioning crumbled in the face of hope. But the cartel leadership wasn't finished. Their flagship, a massive dreadnought nearly twice the size of the Crimson Eclipse, moved into position for a final assault. "They're powering up something big," Volkov warned. "Energy readings are off the charts." "Let them come," Lyra said, her voice resonating with power.
Our child wants to say hello.
The enemy flagship fired, unleashing a beam of concentrated energy that should have torn through any normal vessel. Instead, it met a barrier of pure precursor energy, channeled through the unique combination of Alarian and Cygnus DNA that their child represented. The beam didn't just stop, it reversed, following the connection back to its source. But instead of destroying the cartel ship, it began transforming it, spreading the same awakening that had started on the Crimson Eclipse.
Holy! Volkov briest over the com.
Are you seeing this?
They were.
Through their shared vision, Joran and Lyra watched as the precursor technology spread from ship to ship, breaking down barriers, healing modifications, and offering choices where before there had been only chains. In the crystal chamber, Lyra turned in Joran's arms, her eyes glowing with joy and love. "Do you remember," she asked, "when you found me buried in those ruins?" My heart stopped.
Ho kulti forget.
Joran replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Best decision I ever made, bringing you back." "You didn't just restart my heart," she said softly. "You started something new, something that's going to change everything." Their kiss was interrupted by a powerful kick from within Lyra's abdomen, making them both laugh. "I think someone's ready to meet us," Joran said, caressing the swell of her belly.
Soon, Lyra promiset.
"But first, we have a galaxy to help heal. Together." The Crimson Eclipse shuddered under another assault. The remaining Syndicate loyalists were launching one last desperate attack. In the precursor chamber, Syrah's grip on Brian's hand tightened. Another contraction. "Your timing is impeccable, little one." She gasped, her violet skin pulsing. "Just like his father." Brian grinned. Admiral Volkov's voice cracked. "We've got multiple boarding parties. They are targeting your location. It seems that want your kid, more than they want revenge." "Like hell they will."
Brian growled.
Dr. Chester was monitoring Lyra. "The child's energy is off the charts. He's strengthening the ship's defenses." "That is our boy," Syrah smiled, "protecting his family before he is even, Brian, he is coming now." The chamber's entrance opened. Former Syndicate soldiers that defected entered. Their leader spoke, "We owe you our freedom. We will die before we let them touch your family."
The first explosion rocked the doors.
The precursor crystals pulsed faster.
Almost tere.
Dr. Chester encouraged, "One more push." Brian held her tight. Something extraordinary happened. The sun's consciousness expanded.
By all the stars.
A new cry filled the chamber. Brian found himself holding a perfect baby boy. "He is beautiful."
Syrah briest. Our little, Ilarian Cygnus miracle.
"He needs a name." Syrah smiled. "In my culture, we name children after the moment of their greatest potential. I think, Kylos. It means, bridge between stars."
Kylos Carter. Brian tested the name.
Outside the chamber, the remaining syndicates surrendered. "Your son just ended a war by being born," Dr. Chester said. Syrah pulled Brian down. "Thank you for finding me, for restarting my heart, for a new life, a new love, and now this." The precursor crystals pulsed. Brian could feel Kylos. Their son would be something new, a bridge. 3 weeks later, Brian stood at the viewport, his son floating. "That is it, little star." Syrah cooed.
The moment of peace shattered. Emergency alarms.
Syndicate signatures, but different. "They are running dark," Volkov said.
Ghost ships, Lyra whisperet.
Brian remembered the intelligence reports. The ghost ships surrounded them. KYTH, sensing his parents, reached out. "We have to help them." Brian said, "They are people trapped." "The boy is the key," a new voice surrender him. Brian's response was impossible. "Get a strike team." "Already there," Rax replied.
The ghost ships attacked.
KYTH created a shield. "Parker, we need a plan." "The neural network," Syrah gasped. "KYTH can see it. One node." "It was a command ship, take it out." "Syrah, our bond can reach them."
Do it, Brian whisperet.
Ship after ship broke formation. "Now," Parker ordered. Their control ship exploded, a pulse of corrupted energy. KYTH reached out, he healed it.
The space shimmered, a ship, precursor origin. Syrah briest, by all the stars.
The bridge child awakens, a new voice, a being of pure energy.
Brian stepped forward. Who are you? We are the Guardians.
Syrah, the precursors, they were preparing for this moment.
Yes, the Guardians, humanity and Cygnus, perfect harmony.
Hold up, Brian, we were manipulated?
No, your quase was your own, Brian Carter.
KYTH reached out. He is ready, the Guardian.
Like hell, Brian growled.
Look closer, Syrah said. The crystalline ship extended an invitation, not just to KYTH, but to all of them. Together. Brian asked.
Alves togeter.
Syrah said.
Kylos happy gurgle.
Well, don't keep them waiting, Volkov said. The transition, seamless. Brian held his family. You know, he said. I never did tell you why I decided to try that crazy revival. Because, Syrah said, even with your heart stopped, you were the most alive thing. And bringing you back would change everything. And did it? Syrah teased. Brian, it changed the whole damn universe. Beautiful, and we are just getting started. The precursors smiled.